The first man said to himself, you know, if I have curry chicken one more time for lunch, I'm going to end my life. The second man says to himself, well, if I have goat head soup one more time, I will end my life. And the third man says, well, if I have salad one more time, I will end my life as well. So next day, all three men met for lunch. And the first man opened up his lunch, and guess what he had? Curry chicken. So he said, end his life. Second man opened up his lunch, guess what he had? Goat head soup. And the third man, guess what he had? Salad. You got it. So now all three men has ended their life. So now here are the wives, they're at the funeral, and they were asked, what happened? Why didn't the men just come to you and say, you know what, I don't want this for lunch, I want something else? So the first wife said, well, I don't understand. All you have to do was come and ask me. I would have given him something different for lunch. And then the second guy said the same thing. You know, I would have given him something different for lunch. But the third wife, she shook her head and said, wait a minute, I don't understand. He makes his own lunch. Well, you know, we all make our own lunch in life. And today, we're going to talk about that. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Pastor just talked about that. So what we're going to do today, we're going to talk about sharing some wisdom, providing some understanding, and then also providing some knowledge. So there's no perishing in this regard as we leave here today. So, how important is your family? That's my family. My wife, 2 kids. My son is 12, my daughter is 9. My wife and I have been married 15 years. Thank God, right? So, I would imagine that your family is as important as it is to mine, right? I was born in Montserrat, West Indies. Came to the States when I was 10. Single mom of 4. I was the only son. My path just a little bit when I came to the States. I was in my middle school, went to high school, college. But one thing I want you to understand is that my mom, she was never able to support any of the activities I did in school. I was very good at wrestling. And she never once came to one of my events. Why? She was a housekeeper, and she worked all her life, trying to provide for me and my 3 sisters. So I lost out on a scholarship because the knowledge in the family was not there. I applied to one college, that was Kane University, because I knew I would get in. My dad, which I hadn't seen since I left Montserrat when I was 10, called me my junior year in college. Never heard from him since I left. Talked for 5 minutes and then said, I'm going back to Montserrat because it's too cold in the U.S. I cried for 2 hours. 2 hours. What I'm trying to get at is that we fall into circumstances sometimes, right? Kids typically don't ask their parents to be born, right? So we're going to talk about some generational blessing because we ought to be blessed to be a blessing, right? We'll get into more of our story a little later, but I want you to understand something. That generational blessings, your family dynamics could be the same as someone else's, but it could be also different. We all learn from each other, but we should be a blessing to others. And as we'll get into our presentation, you'll hear more of that.
Amen. And this is my family. That's my wife, 2 kids. And I'm blessed to have them for, my wife for 7 years, and my daughter is 5, turning 6 soon, and my son is 15 months brand new. Amen. And like Fabian was saying, my family is second to God, the most important thing to me. Okay, and I do everything to protect them and make sure that they're okay, and make sure that they can survive because of me. And now, here's my story. I was born in the U.S. I'm first generation Haitian American, okay? So I'm born to immigrant parents that came to the U.S., couldn't speak the language, and tried to make it work for the children, okay? You know, I have both my mom, my dad. I lost my dad when I was a teenager in 1995, and I'll get into that story a little bit later. And my path was similar to Fabian's. You know, I went to, you know, Catholic school all my life, so Christ and the Lord was embedded into me since I was a young person. And then it wasn't until after college that I really understood what Christ was and getting into the Lord, etc. Then I built my family, and then and that's when, you know, I learned the importance of life insurance when I was building my family and getting into learning the word of the Lord. So, like Fabian was saying, the generational blessings are huge, and these are things that are very important to everyone, I believe in. I'm going to give some facts about some things that I feel that I guess everyone in this room can relate to, okay? One is we're born to someone, okay? I think we can all agree on that concept, right? We were all born. Bad things happen to good people. I'm sure everyone in here is a good person on Sunday. And, and we know that bad things happen to good people, okay? Now, the brother earlier was talking about that van that you guys are definitely going to get. That means you need insurance for that, right? You're just going to get insurance once you get those two vans. You're going to get insurance. You need insurance for your home, this building, okay? Everyone that either has a job or aspires to have a job or wants to be healthy will have health insurance, okay? And if you're lucky enough and fortunate enough to have a car, a home, and good health and health insurance, then you probably have bills, okay? And everyone has a family that we're born to. Now, everyone has someone that depends on them, okay? Somebody that looks to you to take care of them and to make sure that they survive. Now, the one thing we can say that is guaranteed is that every one of us in this room will, at some point, expire, okay? We will all die at some point. Now, I wish it was like a milk carton that says I will expire in about 2 weeks, and I can just live out my life the way I wish. But I don't know when I'm going to expire. So it's one thing we can say is that we all will die, we all will expire. So what is the most important insurance, since you have the car insurance, the home insurance, the health insurance, what's the most important insurance you should have? Okay? Life insurance, exactly. And there's two types of life insurance. And here's the Webster, here's the definition of life insurance. It guarantees a specific sum of money to a designated beneficiary upon the death of the insured. What that pretty much means is that at the point that you expire, and you will, myself or Fabian will go to your family's home and deposit and give them a check, okay? And that's pretty much what that means, okay? There's two types of life insurance. There's temporary, and we have whole life. Now, temporary is for a specific amount of time. That means for a designated period of time, you'll have life insurance. 10, 20, or 30 years for the temporary life insurance. Okay, this does not have any cash value, the temporary life insurance. What that means is that you can't borrow from it ever, okay? If you expire within that period of time, then we will cut your family a check. Critical illness. The temporary life insurance allows for critical illness. That means if for whatever reason you get diagnosed with a disease, cancer, HIV, etc., you can use a portion of those funds to do with as you wish. If you want to just enjoy life for whatever amount of time you have remaining, you can do that. And then charitable giving. I'm sure Pastor will enjoy this one. Charitable giving means that you can designate your life insurance policy if you pass away to your church as a charitable device. Okay, so if you expire, you can have a portion of your life insurance given directly to the church. The second type of life insurance we have is whole life insurance. It's permanent, okay, and it goes up to the age of 120 years old. Now, if anyone can tell me that they plan to live past 120 years old, please let me know now. Talk to me at the end so I can see how you do that. It builds cash value. What that means is that you have the ability to borrow from this particular life insurance, okay? So if you have a young child and you plan for him or her to go to college, and you're going to need funds for books, etc., You can borrow from that life insurance policy to pay for that particular expense, okay? And this also allows for charitable giving. Again, if you expire, you can have a portion of your life insurance given to the church.
So why some people don't have life insurance? I'm too young or I'm too old. I don't believe in life insurance. I'm from the islands. Everyone in the islands says, I don't believe in life insurance. Why? Because if I get life insurance, something's going to happen to me. Right? I'm sure you've heard of that. I can't afford life insurance. This one is easy. You can't afford not to have life insurance. I don't need life insurance. I already have life insurance to my job. That's a very good thing. I applaud you if you have life insurance to a job. But let's look at that for a minute. Let's say you work at a job. Let's say you start today. 10 years from now, you may or may not be at that same job. Do you know what the average amount of years that someone stays at a job? 4 to 5 years. You cannot take that policy with you. So let's say you wait 10 years. That means you're 10 years older. That means your premium that you would have paid has now just doubled. So it makes sense to get something outside of work because that's your own. I haven't been asked. Well, today, you have been asked. No longer can you use that one. And it's unpleasant to think about dying. Yes, we understand that it is unpleasant, but it is a reality as well. Correct? The one thing I don't want any of you to ever have to say is that I can't get life insurance. And do you know why people say they can't get life insurance? Because situations happen to them. Health challenges. I'll give you a perfect example real quick. February of last year, I had to get a surgery to remove what's called a lipoma from the back of my head. Non-cancerous, thank God, right? But who would have known that I would have had to do that if I didn't have life insurance before I would have gone and said, Fabian, sorry, you can't get life insurance now. So you plan while you're healthy, right? Here are some financial needs on why you would need life insurance. Final death expenses could range anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000. I mean, that's serious money. Okay, so what is this saying is that you could put a policy in place so if you were to expire, your family now won't ever have to worry about covering your life expenses. You can go directly to the funeral parlor and everything will be arranged because now the funeral parlor knows that you have a life insurance policy. Income replacement. God forbid something were to happen to your spouse. That income that your spouse was making now leaves the home, but you have a policy in place to replace that income. So now your spouse doesn't have to sell their house, their cars, and so forth to move. Mortgage cancellation. You have a $500,000 house. Something happens to you. Your spouse is left with that $500,000 house and doesn't have your income. So now, if you had a policy in place, they can pay off the house and not have to stress. Education, school loans. How many of us went to school? I'm sure all of us, most of us. And was there a loan that went with that? Right? Like I told you, I went to school, I knew I was going to get in because financial aid can't follow that. Right? So if you have loans, that could be paid off. How about retirement? Have anyone looked at their Social Security statement lately? I looked at mine 2 years ago, and I think it was $1,000. At 65, I'm sorry, I don't think it's going to be more than, I don't know, maybe $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. What am I going to do with that? What's my family going to do with that? Right? So you got to plan for these things. Again, how many people are better off because you've lived, right? Be blessed to be a blessing. This is only one book outside of the Bible that we all are concerned with. Do you know if you go on vacation, you look at one book to see where you can go and how long you can go there? Do you know what book that is? Does anyone know what book that is? Okay, well, if any of these things happen, do you know what book you go to? Your checkbook. Right? Right? It speaks to you. When you go home today, open it up, and it will speak to you. Right? We want to be as real as possible with you today. Because for lack of knowledge, what? Exactly. How many people are better off because you've lived? So real quick, here's my testimony. When I came to the U.S., I stayed with my aunt in New York for 2 years. Her husband was a bodybuilder. Really, really good. 2 years after I came to the country, he died. Had a brain tumor. No life insurance. Now, 10 years old, I didn't know what that meant. They had 3 kids. Myself and my 3 sisters lived with them in an apartment in New York, 2-bedroom apartment. We saw the struggles of living there. This past 2011, the mom passed away of cancer. No life insurance. So they had 16 brothers and sisters all together. Guess what they did? Okay, who has 1,000? Who has 500? Who has this? And everyone is trying to gather money to provide her with a proper funeral. That was a wake-up call for me. Because right then and there, I thank God that I was provided with some wisdom and knowledge so that way I could get a life insurance for my family and put it in place. I didn't want that to happen for my kids. Now let Patrick tell his story.
And my testimony is a little bit more close to home. And my situation is this. I think that I am in insurance for a reason. I think God put me in for a reason because of my life experience. Amen. I feel like, well, when I was 14, and I told you earlier, when in 95, my father died. I was 14 years old. Now, this is immigrants from Haiti. They had no clue about life insurance or what to do. 4 children in the home. Okay, he passed, and I spent, I would say, the next 10 years of my life trying to figure out how to survive as a man, 1, without my father, and 2, without the finances to make it through life. My mom worked in a factory with 4 children. I'm the youngest of the 4. And had my parents planned appropriately and had life insurance, I could be in a very different place right now. My life could have been a little bit different. Some of the experiences that I've experienced in my life, I could have avoided if I had. My parents would have planned a little bit differently and had life insurance in place. And the struggle was difficult. And I don't want to get into that because I might get emotional. I don't want to do that. But I think it's very important because having experienced it as a young age, as a 14-year-old, losing a parent, and then having another parent literally struggle through life to take care of 4 kids, I wouldn't want that for my kids. And that's why I think that God put me here in this particular position to help others. And maybe somebody else in here can learn from my experiences and say, okay, I'm going to prepare my family in case I expire. And that's my testimony.
We're getting ready to wrap up here, but I wanted to leave you with this real quick. What did David do? David gathered the materials for Solomon, didn't he not? And Solomon built that temple for God, and what happened? He was blessed mightily. Right? So, again, here's a parent gathering the material for their kids. Let's run through this because we don't have Q&A, which will be later. Faith is an action word. So, in closing, we want to leave you with this. If you cannot have what you hoped, do not sit down in despair and allow the energies of your life to run to waste, but arise and grid yourself to help others to achieve. If you may not build, you may gather materials for him that shall. If you may not go down the mine, you can hold the ropes. So again, as Pastor mentioned, for lack of knowledge, our people perish. We do not want you to perish in this regard. So Pastor, thank you so very much for inviting us, and I hope we bless someone here today.